Hello, welcome to this video. This is the basics of classroom management for teacher candidates. One of the things before we dive in is that I do know that there's a wide range of age groups that you'll be working with from pre-K up to grade 12. So because of that, hopefully there's some information in here that's beneficial to where you're teaching and you find it interesting and helpful. I will be relating a lot back to my own personal experience. Most of my career was in 5th grade. I did teach as young as 1st grade, and I did have some classes that were junior high level as well in my career. So from 1st grade to 8th grade is my primary area of expertise, both 5th grade being where I spent most of my career before coming into higher ed. So that being said, I'm going to go over, this was a workshop we did in the past with student teachers live. So there are some activities. If you want to pause the video, that's fine. And if you want to skip ahead, that's fine too. It's your own decision on how you want to look at this video. I decided to make a session on classroom management because, in all honesty, it's the #1 thing that comes up in evaluations of teacher candidates. So meaning it's the area that most of the times teacher candidates have to work on and improve. Sometimes in the past, supervisors, cooperating teachers have simply said, improve classroom management. And that's too vague. And I will say, well, what does that look like? What are some areas, what are some ways you can improve? So I sat down and kind of came up with this workshop. So we'll see how long it is. It might be 2 videos, it could be 3. I could go really quickly and make it 15 if that's how it goes. But normally this is a 1-hour session. And that being said, here's an opening activity I want you to think about. So typically what I would want you to do is I want you to really imagine some of your best teachers and the best classrooms that you have been in as a student. What was that like? What was the environment like? What was the feeling? What did the teacher do to make that classroom like that? Now, a lot of times people will talk about friendliness and kindness and compassion, and those are great attributes too. But I want you to go further and say, how was that environment made up so that it could allow for that teacher to show that compassion and kindness and friendliness? So once again, if you want to pause the video, it's fine. If not, I'm going to keep going. All right, so typically some answers that we have are that things seem fair, that there was clear rules, clear expectations, there were policies and procedures that you learned and were taught, and you're able to follow those. The key word that often comes up is respect. That the teacher showed you respect, the teacher showed classmates respect, and the teacher expected to be respected by everyone as well. There was a mutual level of respect that was being shown and given on all parties. Everyone respected the environment of learning in the classroom, and that's a really key thing. All too often, new teachers want the classroom environment to be fun. They want it to be engaging and lively, and I understand that. We don't want students to be bored and falling asleep at their desk. However, the key word is respectful. We want a classroom to be respectful and focused on learning. Fun can survive and thrive in a classroom that's respectful. In a classroom that's not respectful, even if you plan for fun and wonderful activities, they're going to be ruined because kids will argue or students will not listen to your instructions for the fun activity you've planned, and it's just going to go downhill. Okay, engaged, task-focused learning environment is what we're looking for. So here's some things about that roll into classroom management. So the first thing I always tell new teachers is really focus on this concept of doing no harm to your students. And that's kind of shocking because sometimes people are like, well, of course I'm not going to harm my students. I would never do that. But let's kind of take that a deeper level. So in the first way, there's the things that will automatically get you a grounds for dismissal. Physically assaulting a student, verbally, emotionally abusing a student, of course, any sexual nature with a student. These are clear violations of ethical norms and ethical aspects of being a teacher. These, of course, will get you removed automatically. But that's not really what I'm talking about here compared to the things that we don't necessarily think about as how we harm our students. One is neglect. Oftentimes there are a couple students in the classroom that might bother you or might annoy you, and you tend to neglect them. You tend to ignore them because you feel like if you just ignore the problem, it will go away, and you treat that student as such. That's neglectful. And that's not something you should be doing. You need to be able to address it in an assertive way and build that connection and relationship even with the students that may rub you the wrong way sometimes. On the opposite hand, sometimes students are going to crave attention, especially as a new, young, typically young student teacher, and they tend to want to be your best friend, and they want you to treat them as a favorite in the classroom, or to give them special favor compared to their peers. That, of course, is inappropriate as well as playing that favorite game. So that leads to the last aspect of do no harm, and it's a big aspect that I want you to really consider and think about prior to student teaching, and that's demonstrating any form of prejudice. A lot is going on right now in the country and the news in terms of racial prejudice, but also prejudice for gender, classism, those things where when I student taught, there's obvious difference in class where there are some students who have a lower socioeconomic status. And I could see that teachers sometimes tended to not want to really do much with them or provide for them. They looked down upon them. I could tell that from how the teachers acted towards that. So you as a student teacher need to make sure you're coming in not demonstrating any form of prejudice, and that you're looking at your students and trying to work with each and every one of them and dedicate time and attention to them. One of the major ways that prejudice often happens in schools is lowered standards and expectations. A student who may be different than their peers, or may appear different, or use a different language at home, or have different abilities, often have lowered standards and expectations, and then they don't end up learning as much. And so we're ending up harming the student that way. The final thing to consider is things like the books that we use and the materials we use, the resources we use. A lot of that I know will be given to you as a student teacher and be told, here's what you need to be teaching. But you need to take a step back and think about it and really look at what you're teaching and what you're using. When I taught 5th grade, often I would find glaring errors and problems and oversimplifications in many of the textbooks, but especially my social studies textbook. I felt like the history that they were presenting in American history just really glossed over things like the attempted genocide of Native Americans, all the atrocities of slavery. And so these were things that I would have to bring into the classroom to do justice to, in reality, the truth of history. The textbook was written in a way that kind of sugarcoated a lot of the horrible things that happened in America's history, and I felt my students needed to know about those things. So anyways, keeping it going, first rule, do no harm. Think about how you could possibly harm students and make that list of what ways you could avoid that. So maybe you've already done that activity before. I find that most new teachers have never really sat down and thought about the fact how they could harm a student. And so I always find that to be a good activity to do. All right, next I really want you to, once again, you can pause the video if you want. This goes really well with Dr. Browning's video on core reflection. So if you haven't watched his, it's a 15-minute video that he provided. I recommend it highly. But one of the things that I think you should really focus on is your core beliefs and what you think is the best way to treat children and what you think that looks like for an ethical behavior. This allows you to make sure you're aligned with your core beliefs and that you are always acting in a professional manner. So once again, if you want to pause the video, jot down some ideas, that would be great. Okay, I'm going to try in the next couple minutes to quickly introduce some books and materials. That's my own classroom management journey. Then I'll probably pause this video and make a second part. One of the books, I have it here too, and you see the picture, First Days of School. This was a book that was used both in my college. I've used it, maybe it was my master's degree, I'm sorry, can't remember which college level it was, but we really analyzed it at one level in my academics, but I had a principal, and he had a great statement about the book. He said if all the teachers that he hired could, as a bare minimum, follow this book and do what's in this book, the school would be amazing. And he was right, and that was his expectation for us. So if you haven't read The First Days of School, if you don't have this book, it's a great manual Yes, it's very focused on assertive discipline. So you might want to, go further to restorative justice or other practices in terms of classroom management. But this is a great first step. If you're in the Wayne area and you want to borrow my book, come by anytime. Love to have you have it. Um, okay, I show you a picture of Ron Clark, and I show a picture of a book that probably you've never heard of by an author named Edward Ford, Ed Ford. And I'll mention all those in just a moment. Okay, so I'm running short on time on this first video, so I'm going to go quickly with this slide to explain what it means. I would tell my students that from day one, I don't raise my voice, I don't yell, I don't scream, I don't lose my temper. I don't need to do those things because that would be childish. Instead, I have set up rules and expectations, and there's a clear consequence. And I use the metaphor of policeman. Policeman on a corner, if he's saying, "You're speeding, you're speeding, you're speeding," that doesn't do anything. But the moment a policeman turns on his or her lights and pulls somebody over and writes a ticket, that slows people down. There's a consequence. And so that's my metaphor that I gave to my students. I have rules, I have expectations. We will establish these rules and expectations together as well and refine them all during the first couple of weeks of school, first days of school. But there's a consequence for people who choose to break those rules. My goal is to be the best possible teacher for you, not your best friend. I want to be friendly. I want to be respectful. I want to be kind to you, but I am not trying to be your friend. I want you to be each other's friend. I want to be your teacher. And that was a big lesson, especially for my fifth graders, because they sometimes wanted me to be their best friend or wanted me to be like a big brother to them or a father figure to some of them. And all those aspects, I had to kept coming back to, I am your teacher. Here's what it means to be your teacher. I'm providing you with the best quality education possible, and that requires me to set up the classroom in a way that's going to be a learning environment. I also really love one of the things I really love about the book, The First Days of School, is how much they emphasize a well-organized store that has clear routines and things that people have to be done. When you go into a certain store, you know where you find something, you know which aisles, a grocery store or Walmart or whatever, you know that there's aisles that have certain items, you know where to go out for the checkout, you know how to get in for the front door. There's a procedure, and that should be like a classroom. So with that being said, I'm going to quickly go through some of these things about these books and then call this first part good, hopefully. Okay, so First Days of School, this book again, key number one thing is about being organized. I probably won't get into all the stories, but the concept there is have a classroom management plan in place. Something that you're going to be able to follow, something that will be a consequence for your students if they break a rule. Every day that you go into student teach is a job interview. So, and if you're for some reason not going into school, that's also a job interview, right? Keep focusing on improvement, keep focusing how to do things as best possible. Organization is huge. So if you say, well, I'm not really an organized person, that's something you need to work on because you're going to be expected to be an organized teacher. Now, your car might be messy, your house might be messy, but your classroom should be very organized and very professional so that your students can have a more orderly life and know where to put things, where to turn things in, how to get materials, all those things. Briefly, the roll call story, if you're curious, it's much better. In First Days of School, they have an example of old-fashioned roll call where you call everybody's name and kids start goofing around when they're calling names. So much better, so much more effective. If you have a seating chart where you have everybody's name on there, you scan the room and you can see who's not in their chair, that's so much more effective than a roll call, right? So many other ways that you could do something that's more effective. Okay. Ron Clark, his book, I'll show this one again, it's Essential 55. Quickly, all I really need to say about Ron Clark is that he really showed that there's a difference between rules and protocol. And teaching students protocol and good manners is part of your job. It's something that helps kids to become more professional and helps kids to be able to stand out in the world. It gives them a leg up in the world in terms of business and career if they're more professional. We'll talk more about Ed Ford on the next video, but I'll just mention it's called Responsible Thinking Process, and it's really my bread and butter in terms of helping kids to learn how to take responsibility for their own actions. So I'm going to stop there, and then we'll make a second video and possibly a third.